This is Invent Anything. I'm Mark Allen, sitting in for John Cronin, who is right next to me, as you can see. John is the managing director and chairman of IPCG, and we're going to be talking to him about should corporations keep inventing? Inventions keep the world spinning. From fire and the wheel to today's high tech, inventions power change. Turn your inventions into reality. Learn how to get your ideas to market. This is Invent Anything with John Cronin. John, thanks for spending some time with me and allowing me to take over your seat here on Invent Anything.
Thanks, Mark.
I'll just start out. Let's talk about your background. You were with IBM. You're an engineer. Fill us in.
Yes, thanks, Mark. So, having started IBM at a young man, trying to make myself, I guess, in the world, IBM super corporation back in the early 80s, I ended up working in the semiconductor business in Essex Junction, Vermont, and ended up designing memory chips and microprocessors and things like that, the processes for them. And I got a lot of training as an electrical engineer at IBM in design and process definitions. And over time, I found my way to the invention side of the world in IBM. I had a mentor, Bruce Bertelson, who was retiring, and for 6 months or so, he taught me his process for inventing. And I can't tell you, the very first time I asked him, I said, Bruce, can you teach me how to invent? He says, of course I can. And he says, if you want, just show up with a problem a week from now and let's start talking about it. So over time, Bruce taught me the invention process. I remember the first invention we defined together and documented and taking it to the dreaded review board to have people review my ideas. And I cherished so much the times when he would stand in front of me and take the hard questions. And eventually we started getting some great results together. He retired. And so I practiced his process in a very large company called IBM. And I just loved doing it. Every weekend I would bring home some problems and think about how to solve them. And over time I filed 600 inventions within 4 or 5 years. And from that came like 100 or so patents being issued. And another 150 enabled publications, which are really patentable inventions, but the business case to file them weren't there. So that's pretty good, right? And so articles and things were written about me as a top inventor. And so I got to meet Jack Kelo, the president of IBM, who basically asked me to talk about how I'd done what I'd done at a very young age. And I told him it wasn't about me, it was about my mentor, Bruce Bertelson, and a lot of weekends working. And he knew Bruce, and absolutely he loved this guy the way I did. And he said, well, John, why don't you build something for IBM like this? Can you build like a invention or patent factory? So basically I went back to Burlington from Armonk with the charge to see if I could do this for IBM. And in 1988, 89 or so, I created what was called the Invention and Patent Factory. And that had tremendous results. We went from about 1,000, 1,200 patents a year to 3,500 patents a year.
Whoa.
We started a sister group in licensing, and we went from about 20 million a year to 2 billion a year. So that was the track record that I got at IBM. But most importantly, working for a very large company in the field of innovation and inventing was really fun but challenging because corporations are huge, and affecting change in a corporation does not happen overnight, Mark.
Yeah, I think of the Broadway show How to Succeed in Business. You without really trying. You tried. You worked
Yeah,
very hard, and you showed yourself as a an example of what you can do even in a large business. Right.
yes, yeah, absolutely.
Right. Today in the 21st century, do corporations need to continue to invent?
Absolutely they do. And the question is, and you might think about this, does invention mean breakthrough? Is that what corporations are looking for? Or are they looking for just minor improvements in their process for cost reductions? Certainly, all the time that the new ideas are needed, inventions are needed. The market's pulling everybody how to do this better. creating time for yourself, how to help give you more enjoyment, help save the environment. All these things are problems that corporations have in their product sets. There's in the creativity field, there are what's called 200 satisfaction planes, meaning a satisfaction plane might be I want to have fun. Another one might be I don't want to be annoyed. Another one is I want to feel good about myself. Or another is I want to feel comfortable or long term about something. Think about all the products that there are and think about how to improve any one of those products or services with these things that human beings want to be satisfied. There's lots of room for inventing. And so I think that absolutely corporations need to invent. And it's anything from the small packaging improvement to a think tank. Right now I'm working with the think tank where they're interested in the top 6 problems in the world, cybersecurity and the environment. And they're looking for big ideas. As it turns out, that one of the things that we've come up with is the ability to invent prior to innovation is important, and the ability to make innovation streamlined. So whether it's a breakthrough, a think tank, or just a small improvement of the process, absolutely, Mark, corporations need to invent all the time.
You just mentioned innovation and invention. Aren't they the same?
Well, the way I look at it is that invention is the greatest tool in the innovation toolbox. Innovation means moving an idea from mind to market, where invention is solving a problem or discovering a solution for something that's new and useful. So think about it. In innovation, there's everything. There's cost sizings, and there's hiring lots of people, and there's marketing. What do you put it on the shelf? I mean, innovation is a big word, moving an idea from mind to selling it in the market. Where invention could be a breakthrough, but still it's a very small piece of the overall innovation process. And so when I look at innovation, I mean, if you even think about the word innovation, you can get on Google Ngram and type in a word and see over the last 150, 200 years how many times the word is used. Broadly speaking, for publications. Invention really peaked in the 1880s, 1900, and then the word inventing has come down, where innovation didn't even exist as a word people would use until about 30, 40 years ago. So today we talk about innovation as if it's inventing, but it is different. The processes are different. Where inventing is fundamentally that classical solving a problem or discovering something new. We have a podcast we just recently went through, Mark, as you know, going through the details of the difference between invention and innovation and what the tactics are and how you can improve both invention and innovation together. So I'd encourage anyone interested in the subject to go to that podcast because I think you can learn a lot more detail about it.
This is Invent Anything with John Cronin. I'm Mark Allen, sitting in for John, and I really appreciate John allowing me to do that. We're taking a look at John's background history as how it can help you and your corporation invent and use innovation to move forward in the 21st century. More coming up as Invent Anything continues. You're listening to Invent Anything with John Cronin. Be sure to visit us at inventanything.net. There's information, articles, and more. And you can leave your thoughts and comments there as well. That's inventanything.net. And now back to John and this episode. This is Invent Anything. I'm Mark Allen, sitting in with John Cronin. We're talking about, do corporations need innovation? Do corporations need invention? And we're going to start by asking John, do corporations actually need to continue to invent once they come up with, product X? Do they need to come up with product XYZ?
Yeah, Mark, it's at one level it's simple, but at another level, of course, because the corporation gets complicated really quickly. So let's just backtrack a bit here. We talked earlier about that product and services change by the pull of the market, by the need of people, and by improving things incrementally or by having breakthroughs. Let's just say we've talked about that. But do they actually need to invent? Well, one of the things about corporations is that they're full of people, and people are very creative, and of course they're just inventing, whether you ask them to or not. And I always think that's kind of fun that people are going to invent whether you ask them to or not. So one of the things about corporations is it would be good to have a strategy and a plan to direct the inventive mind to have them invent where they want them to invent. So that's one thing. Corporations need to invent because if you look whether they want to be a first mover or a fast follower, there's invention in both of those. First movers opening the market, with a fast follower is somebody who's going to make that market even better, cheaper, faster, whatever. Another reason why corporations need to invent almost continually is they're in a constant competitive pressure. Always competitors coming in trying to take some of the market share away. You can see all sorts of reasons why companies need to invent. Just take COVID, for instance. What happened to the supply chain? What happened to the environment? How does that impact things? I mean, right now, look at all the corporations that sort of make wine. They're really going to struggle. Do they need to invent? Absolutely quickly. So there are forces that are in the market, forces that are political forces in the market that really come from, the competitors. So there's lots of forces on corporations. Some companies plan quarter by quarter, so they have to react fast. Some companies have more longer-term plans. They need to invent, but invent differently. So there's all sorts of things that drive this idea of invent. Now let's come right down to it. Invention as a word means to create something that's new and useful. Now who wouldn't want to do that? Innovation, when it comes down to it, its definition is moving an idea from mind to market. As I've said earlier, invention is the best tool in the innovation toolbox, but it's not the only one.
Well, I'm going to rephrase this question, and that is, do most corporations invent, or do they kind of put it on the back burner?
Mark, I'm so glad you asked that question because when I saw it the first time to think about it, I had to take a step back because it's something that I've learned the hard way over the many years with IP Capital, working with Fortune 500 companies. I've had the opportunity to talk to people that run innovation centers, hundreds and hundreds of companies. And one of the things I found is that even though I've worked with 15% of the Fortune 500s, when I initially come in to talk to companies, do you know that 95% of these companies, their process to invent is ad hoc? What does that mean? They don't have a formal invention program. They don't have tools. They don't have creativity tools. They don't have IP strategies. They don't have invention strategies. At most, they have a roadmap. And I'm not saying that roadmaps are bad. I'm not saying that corporations are bad by not having this. I'm just saying, in my view, they're incredibly ad hoc. Another thing is that most corporations don't recognize inventors. They don't even know who they are many times. If I went to some, vice president of engineering and asked them who are your top 5 inventors, they wouldn't even know the names of them. So that's a real problem, right? Ad hoc, not rewarding inventors, not knowing it. And despite all this, marketing, business people, engineers, technicians, they're all solving problems. So what's happening is you think about it. Take Uber. It changed the model from taxi, to this on-demand transportation. Boy, that was a breakthrough. But that breakthrough it's an app, but it's a breakthrough in the business model. So yes, corporations do need to invent. They need to invent new business models, for instance. They need to invent new products, new services. They even need to invent, Mark, new ways to invent. And we'll talk about this later about artificial intelligence and how that is a new tool on the block. But yes, corporations absolutely do need to invent because if they don't, they will wither away to their competition and the market dissing them for not having the right products and services at the right time.
And you were telling me that with a cell phone, there's like 300,000
Yep.
patents in that cell phone.
Yep.
That is absolutely amazing. Technology moves very quickly, and how do corporations stay ahead of the game with technology changing so fast?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, Mark, it used to be every 2 or 3 years the market would demand a new product, and then it moved to almost 18 months. And today it's almost on demand. As soon as the product goes out, they want a new one, or the service goes out. So it is ultra fast. And what's happening is the companies are developing platforms in order to produce derivative products really quickly. So usually companies have their standard road maps or their plans for their product or services, and that directs their innovation. And in some companies, to the lower level, running brainstorming sessions and inventing. A lot of companies try to use innovation tools, whether it be a kind of an innovation or an IP landscape, to kind of draw a map of your business and see what companies are playing where and where the opportunities are. Are there startups out there that I need to know, universities, etc.? Some companies start innovation centers or they start innovation groups. And it's kind of sad, by the way, Mark, that a lot of the companies that started these innovation groups or buildings, they stop them after about 5 years because for some reason they're not effective. So a lot of money is spent on innovation, but a lot of times it doesn't produce the results because they think
What
it's a
should
building.
what should they be doing instead of building building a building and creating that center? Should they?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it really works itself from the opposite direction. It works itself from the ability have to get at the people level first, to be appreciative of the ingenuity and the creativity of people, put in recognition reward systems for ingenuity and creativity and invention, and then build up it from the bottom up in the culture. And that's sometimes difficult. Another thing that they can do is I mentioned these tools and techniques. If you have a tool in the innovation toolbox and it's not working, throw it out. Try another one. So just don't get stuck on one type of innovation process or method. Some companies, Mark, are hiring chief innovation officers. This label didn't even exist 3 or 4 years ago, and now there's thousands of them. And so if you look at a chief innovation officer, ask yourself the question, what are their backgrounds? And it's usually they come from another company where they did innovation, right? So companies are doing that. We're actually running a process what we call virtualized innovation, where we can actually innovate and create lots of ideas even without a laboratory. So you're virtualizing it. A lot of companies use the M&A direction. Buying companies is a way to solve their innovation. So there's lots of tools and levers that companies use, from process to acquisitions to hiring people. But nothing is better than to have an innovation or inventive culture. If you can do that, get out of the way, because people will be highly innovative and highly inventive on anything that they need to do. All you have to do is steer that inventive or innovative mind.
When we come back, we're going to take a look at what John had mentioned at the top of this segment, and that is artificial intelligence. This is something that personally boggles my mind. Artificial intelligence actually inventing stuff. We'll find out more as Invent Anything continues. You're listening to Invent Anything with John Cronin. Be sure to visit us at inventanything.net. There's information, articles, and more. And you can leave your thoughts and comments there as well. That's inventanything.net. And now back to John and this episode. Invent Anything continues. I'm Mark Allen, sitting in the chair normally occupied by our guest, John Cronin. And we're going to talk about something that absolutely fascinates me. John, you've told me about this. I couldn't believe it. I've done a little bit of research on it. Artificial intelligence is actually inventing things now?
Yes, absolutely, Mark. And it is kind of amazing. It's great to watch technology change. I was thinking about, I don't know how far back you want to go, but just go back to, say, the 60s. Most people
Right,
watching this are been alive since 80 or 90, maybe it was since 60s. The big thing was The Graduate and plastics, right? Plastic wasn't everything.
right.
Then around the mid 1995, you had the internet. Boy, did that change everything, right? The internet basically created industries. Now what's happening is you're starting to recognize this word called artificial intelligence, machine learning. And I could kind of describe AI really quickly to you. Marvin Minsky developed the term in 1957. He said that anything that can be done artificially with your intelligence is called artificial intelligence. What he was meaning was anything a human being did that could be codified in software, he would call AI. And how good could it get, right? Could it ask questions? Could it make decisions? Could it invent? And there's been a lot of discussion about this over the years, but now we're here. So one thing to note is that AI is starting to permeate everything. Anything that has, quote, big data. So what does big data mean? Well, if you had the normal factory, you might collect sensor data once around a shift. But now they have IoT devices everywhere collecting real-time data on everything. Massive amount of data. So companies and corporations just get online. Anything that you do has data associated with. There's big data there. You have satellites taking pictures of everything and everywhere. Sensors everywhere. Big data is everywhere. Great entry for AI. So what does AI do really well? It takes big data and it finds correlations between things. Is the sales of beer go up after it's at what temperature in Boston? Well, you collect that data, you know that after about 72 degrees, the amount of beer sales go up, especially on Friday. So you're
Makes
just
sense.
collecting data and you're correlating with mathematical algorithms. And then you can also do machine learning, which is to say, I'm going to train my machine to see this, and then eventually, if it sees it again, it knows it's right. So AI is everywhere. But now, where is AI? Well, AI happens to be squarely in the inventing field. One of my friends, Steve Taylor, Dr. Taylor, basically created a machine with two GAN networks. I won't go into the details of that. Well, one created ideas, and the other machine analyzed it. And he got these machines to come up with ideas. And he decided to have some of the ideas filed with the patent office. He filed with the UK patent office and the US patent office in other countries. But these were two patents that were essentially invented by a computer. And the UK basically said it can't be an invention because a human being has to be the inventor. The US said the same thing because statutorily the human being submits the invention. But Dr. Taylor did it right. He could have just taken the invention, did a little bit more work, and filed it himself, but he wanted to press the point. South Africa, I'm sorry, I think just allowed the first AI-based patent. That's amazing. And this is just the beginning. I can see AI tools being used, and we're starting to use them ourselves, in order to develop a way to invent and help us to invent. Do you know that I could literally take a claim of a patent, and there's millions of them, and I could take every element of the claim and have the computer take one element of one patent and add to it the next element of the next patent, etc., until I got 10 elements. And I can look at that just randomly, and I have, could be an invention. It might not work, it might work. But then I can analyze it based upon other criteria. And all of a sudden, I start to have technology that can actually invent. And I'm not just talking one or two, I'm talking of millions of inventions per second.
Wow.
So this is an amazing new frontier that I think is going to quickly expand. And you got to find it in the patent office. The patent office is using AI to analyze patents now from prior art. So this is a big topic. It's so big, in fact, that the AIPLA, the American Intellectual Property Law Association, has a number of now breakouts to look at how AI is affecting intellectual property. So this is not just me talking. I have a lot of friends that are involved in this. And I can tell you, Mark, that 5 years ago, I talked to lots of heads of invention, intellectual property, innovation, vice presidents, presidents, CEOs. 5 years ago, 4 years ago, they didn't even think it was possible. Most, in fact, had tried or had heard about it, and the 5% that tried it said it didn't work. Today, in fact, when I talk to these same people, they're all trying to figure out how to implement it. So within 3 to 5 years, we went from total disbelief that it'll never do anything to how to implement it.
Well,
So
even
it's just a tremendous opportunity, I think, for our planet to have machines help us invent.
uh, machine learning. I mean, every week I go to a certain, I travel to a certain place. It's only 20 miles from my home, but I get a note, if you leave now on my phone, if you leave now, you'll make it faster than you did last week. I mean, it, it's amazing. That's machine learning. They know that every Saturday I go to a certain address. Is that one example? I mean,
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, it is. It's the system that looks at everybody's data, puts it on the map, looks at traffic, and then can start to predict how to get through the traffic. But it knows how many new people are coming in, so that they can tell you if you leave now, you're going to be in this queue. And so by learning that over time, they can now do prediction.
uh, you have a story, I think, about that. AI invention has already started. Can you share that?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, this Dabas case of two patents, they are now actively gone through the patent system, and in South Africa, I believe these things were issued. So that's like proof positive now that one country has allowed it, which is great. And I believe me, Dr. Taylor and people like him are not going to stop doing this. So there's going to be more and more. And eventually, it's just like augmentation. So you could get an exoskeleton, I guess, to make you lift heavier boxes. It's just augmentation. So why not have an AI machine at least augment your ideas? And I did this to try it out a number of years ago. Since I own my own company, I can do lots of cool stuff. So about 3 or 4 years ago, I said, I'm going to fund personally the development of a machine that can help me invent. It's going to work with me. And basically, I built the software on the Alexa hardware to essentially basically converse with me. So when I turned it on, I would say, "Hi, Opus," and it would say, "Hi," and it would say, "What would you like to invent?" And I say, "I would like to invent a new shovel." It would say, "Well, what's new about the shovel?" I would say, "I don't know. I need some help." "Okay, would you like to use a creativity tool?" "Sure." So he says, "Okay, does flashing light, does flashing shovel or mixing shovel or vibrating shovel mean anything for you?" So I'm thinking about this. By the way, where did it get flashing shovel or mixing shovel or vibrating shovel? On the internet, there's an API into verbs, and you can just grab randomly 3 verbs, which it did. And one of the tools that we use is putting a random verb in front of the topical noun. Shovel is the noun, random verb. So I was thinking, yeah, I would like to use a flashing shovel. So it would say, tell me what you want to do with flashing shovel. What problem do you want to solve? Well, I was saying, I'm not sure. So it would then be able to look up, shovel and go to the patent literature and look up problems. So it says, would you like to have the flashing shovel help you with safety? Would you like to have the flashing shovel help you with something else? So I said, I like safety. And by the way, I'm trying to put this into just, this is not exactly how it happened, but this is what the tool is capable of. So I said, I like flashing shovel. Let's work with that for safety. So then I would start to think, well, why would a flashing shovel have anything to do with safety? And then I thought, I've seen a lot of workers on the line. I've read stories about people shoveling with the high power lines and getting electrocuted. So why not have a shovel that would flash when it gets too close to the power line? How do you do that? How would I enable that? Now, being an electrical engineer, I instantly knew the circuits to detect EM fields, and then I could wire it up with a battery to the flashing light. And as I started to think about that, then my mind kind of exploded, knowing, hey, look, I could put a little $3 radio on it, put it to my iPhone, and then it could tell management where all the flashing lights are, etc. That's a creativity tool built into a conversation in a machine that I built. And today we created a company, Bright Marbles, and spun that out as Opus. It's a digital assistant for inventing, and it's just at its infancy. Um, you can put it in your mobile device, put it in your pocket, walk around, and talk to this thing, and it helps you invent. So that's today, Mark. Given that AI is invented in the patent office, digital assistants helping you invent. I mean, and I'm doing it myself, and other companies are doing it, and we're just at the beginning of this. It's just going to be so exciting.
I
Having
can't
machines.
wait to check in on this in 2 years, even in a year, to see how it's going. John, we are out of time. Thank you again for allowing me to quiz you and put you in the hot seat, so to speak. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
If you want more information about Invent Anything, you can subscribe to us, and you can also check out our uh, past episodes. And all that information is right here on the screen.